What would happen if instead of running from your greatest fear, you built your entire life around facing it? Wow. Today's guest grew up battling severe anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. So naturally, he said yes to one of the most uncertain, uncomfortable, and seemingly impossible challenges on earth: visiting every country in the world. Before turning 26, Cameron Mofid had traveled to all 195 countries. He crossed war zones, spent time in jail cells, witnessed unimaginable poverty, experienced extraordinary kindness, and completed his journey in a place few Americans have ever entered: North Korea. But this is not simply a story about collecting passport stamps or breaking a record. It is a story about what can happen when we stop allowing fear to make our decisions. Today, Cameron is an adventurer, a humanitarian, a nonprofit founder, and a keynote speaker who is helping people rethink what they believe is possible. Yes. Cameron, welcome to the Yes Show. Welcome to the Yes Show. I'm your host, Christine Trippy. Each week, we'll explore the life-changing power of saying yes, along with hotel leadership made easy. Get ready for inspiration, fun, and sweet hospitality. Let's go. Okay, Cameron, I hope that you have reserved a lot of time because I have at least 4 million questions for you.
Good. I'm happy to answer them from the Ministry of Happiness and Fun.
Okay, I love it. So, first of all, take us back to the moment you decided to visit every country in the world. What were you doing? Where were you at in your life? And what made you say, I'm going to just go visit every country in the world?
Yeah, crazy. So I guess I'll have to backtrack even a little bit before that moment to give some
Okay.
context. So I grew up in San Diego, California. I think very beautiful, amazing city that we have here. But when I was around 12, 13 years old, I started exhibiting symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD.
Mm.
And for those who don't know what that is, OCD is a mental health disorder and anxiety disorder where your mind fills with these intrusive thoughts and overwhelming anxiety to the point that you feel like you can't function anymore and you
Mm.
have to kind of uh, do these compulsions to make the anxiety in your head go away. So it could be tapping, a wooden desk a certain amount of times, flicking on the lights on and off until it feels right in your head, washing your hands, these sorts of things. And slowly, it's gradually kind of just destroys your life and takes over your
Mm.
life. So wound up pretty much losing all of my friends. My grades in school tanked. My performance in tennis dropped dramatically, and kind of convinced myself that the only way I could, get out of my own head was to leave. So I wound
Mm.
up on the other side of the country for college, University of Miami.
Okay.
And when I got there, anxiety was still there, but I found ways to kind of avoid my triggers so I could live, a more normal life.
Hmm.
I grew up to a pretty strict household and that I was never allowed to bring girls around, drink alcohol, this sort of thing. And so when I got to Miami, I mean, you can imagine, right? As one does in Miami, I took a job promoting nightclubs. So
Oh,
yeah.
really?
Yeah, kind of crazy, right? I was this very anxious, introverted teenager, and then
Yes.
got to Miami and became a nightlife promoter, which my mother was thrilled to hear about, of course.
Mm.
So I started doing that, was using the money I was making to do little weekend trips to nearby countries. I'd always been fascinated with travel and geography, and being
Mm.
so close to such a major international airport was taking advantage of that. So I was making money from this nightlife, going to, Nicaragua and Belize and
Okay.
these Caribbean countries. Um, and it helped a lot with my OCD. This was the way that I was kind of learning to be more independent, to live outside of my comfort zone, to force myself into, situations. I was a huge germ freak with my OCD, right? So
Oh,
to
okay.
stay in budget hotels and like Belize that are filled with cockroaches, right? Like
Yeah.
that helps a lot. It's kind of a natural form of exposure therapy. And so COVID happens my freshman year of college.
Oh.
My OCD is getting much worse, so it's kind of coming back isolated. I'm on edge, extremely anxious, and I'm scrolling, I think as everyone did quite a bit during COVID times. And I saw an article that more people had been to space than every country in the world. And I thought that was crazy. Yeah,
Yes.
crazy, crazy. So,
Wow, I had never heard that.
yeah.
That's really cool.
And it was by quite a bit at the time. It was like only 200 people in history had ever been to every country. Around like six or 700 had been to space. And I didn't even know you could go to every country. Like I didn't know you could go to like
Right.
North Korea and Afghanistan and Somalia and Yemen. And I think one of the things about OCD is that once an idea gets in your head, you just can't get it out. And
You're
it just kind of
obsessed.
sat there and took over. Maybe that was one of the good things OCD gave me, right? And yeah, it just felt like, kind of an enormous, gigantic, extraordinary expedition that I would go on, but also something that would really help me to learn to live outside of the bounds of my OCD. And I read a
Yes.
bit about exposure therapy, which is a therapy for,
Oh.
are you familiar with that?
I've heard the term, but I don't have experience with it.
Yeah, so it's a therapy for people with OCD and other disorders as well, where you intentionally put yourself in situations
Mm.
that your disorder hates. So, if I hated, let's say, like dust and germs, right, or dust and dirt, let's say, right, or insects, like I would intentionally force myself to stay in hotels or motels that
Yeah.
were pretty dirty, or I would go
Yes.
to like
Camping.
villages, exactly, like intentionally putting yourself in that situation and then gradually increasing the tolerance level. So this felt like a way to combine two of my biggest passions, huge geography, nerd growing up, and then also with OCD wanted to improve, and that was the genesis for this idea.
First of all, did you do this piecemeal or did you go off on a journey and come back with a goal?
Yeah, so I guess around COVID time, so this is when I decided I was gonna do this. So I still had around like 3 years of college, and the timing was great, which I forgot to mention because I had gone from promoting nightclubs to starting my own nightlife marketing company,
Oh.
which yeah, mom was really thrilled to hear that job update. She always said that she wanted me to be an entrepreneur one day, so
Mhm.
be careful what you ask your kids for, right?
Yes, yes.
So I started that. That was my way of kind of financing the trip. So I was still in Miami, still obviously needed to graduate. So for that 3 years, I was traveling on school breaks, winter break, summer break, long weekends, ticking off the, countries around Central America, Caribbean, South America, longer trips during the more extended breaks. And by the time I had graduated college, I'd been to, I think, 90 countries
Oh,
at that.
wow.
And so obviously, I'd been to most of the more beginner friendly ones. I hadn't gone yet to like Afghanistan and
Right.
uh, the kind of more Yemen, more remote countries, but was pretty advanced traveler. I felt like I was in my flow. I felt that my OCD was getting better and improving, which I was really happy about. And gradually working the way up. So yeah, finished college, saved up enough from the nightlife business that literally the day I finished my last exam, I went straight back to my apartment, took a bunch of clothes, threw them in a duffel bag, and my graduation ceremony was the next week. But like
Wow.
I was like, I'm out of here. Like I want to go do this trip. So I missed my graduation ceremony,
Wow.
put my graduation gown in my duffel bag, and I took a flight to Sudan in North Africa.
Oh.
And I took my graduation pictures in an ancient village by the Nile with these like villagers that I had found.
So let's back up here. Do you feel that it really helped that obsessive compulsion? Did it really level you out? Like you're so easygoing now? How do you feel like
Yeah,
it helped?
it's funny. I think I give off sometimes this vibe that I'm very like California chill, easygoing
You
vibe.
kind
And
of do.
maybe that's true in some ways, but I'm also very like type A, very, neurotic, admittedly, at times, and that definitely stems from the OCD. So, I don't think I'll ever lose that part of me, like that
Mm.
ultra organized, hyper focused.
Which is good.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
to an extent, right? But
Hmm.
um, the sort of negative sides of the disorder that I still face every day, it hasn't been eliminated. It's an incurable disorder, right? So that's something I'll have with me for the rest of my life. But to manage the symptoms in such a way that, I don't feel the need to compulse. So if I, touch something that might be a little dusty or potentially dirty, I don't feel like, my brain is on fire until I go wash my hands.
And are those some of the things that how it channeled in the past?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Like, hand washing. There's different types of OCD. I always say if I didn't have it, I would love to study it because it's fascinating. Like,
Right.
the types of symptoms that people have. Mine is more of a contamination OCD. So if something touches something else that is like contaminated in my mind, let's say. And one thing I want to add is like, I love that your whole brand, I guess, is saying yes, right? Is
Hmm.
yes. And so one thing that I try to recognize positively is that OCD. I try to see it as a superpower in a sense, also that is the only way I can see it, right? That there are some things that made me super organized, super determined, a go-getter, very methodical. And I think that the success that I was able to have ultimately finishing, the goal later on, which we'll get to, came from those very traits.
Yes. There's so much you can attribute to a positive way of those traits, being focused and empowered and where you have to finish.
Yeah,
There's a whole opposite where you've got a million ideas and you don't know how to execute anything. So, I can see a lot of positives in that. Now, I was going to say the way I channel my OCD is eating.
yeah, it's funny.
I love to chew.
Yeah. It's funny too because like mine's the opposite. Like when I get very anxious, I can't eat. Like
Oh,
even to this day,
interesting.
like yeah, if my OCD gets like something's out of control, like I just won't eat. It'll almost like my appetite goes away.
This is such a great lesson for anyone listening right now. For first of all, exposure therapy. This is not just for someone who has OCD. We all have fears. We
Yeah.
all have things that make our heart pound out of our chest. That might be speaking in public. That might be talking to your owner if you're a hotel general manager. What is that? And then identify it, create the awareness. This is something that makes me nervous, and give yourself some exposure therapy. What would that look like? Maybe it's an email first, then it's a call, then maybe it's that in-person visit. Maybe you're going to speak at your team huddle or your quarterly leadership event. So what is that exposure therapy you can give to yourself to keep growing? So the great lesson in all of that as well. Yes, love
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
quickly, how long did it take from country one to 195th?
6-ish years, give or
Six
take.
years.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was 7 years. But yeah, it was. Again, from the start of the journey to the end, it's funny. I go back and I look at some of the pictures, and even now, actually, I'm doing retroactively journal entries from every country because I
Oh,
never actually
good.
did it. So I want to
Yeah,
do that before my memory gets too bad, and I can remember those moments. But
I know.
yes, 7 years. It sounds, I think, both long and short. Like a lot of people will say, only 7 years, but um, it went by slow and fast, and
Yes. Okay, so it took you about 7 years. And for two, I think you said 2 of those years, it was just on the road. You were just gone.
yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. Yeah, two and a
Okay.
half years. Yeah.
Okay. And financially, did you just save up enough to be able to just go for 2.5 years?
Yeah, I think there's a crazy misconception that people think that, I mean, obviously in the grand scheme of, world and opportunity, yes, travel is a huge privilege, but, people don't realize how cheap and inexpensive you can travel, like if you want to. Like,
Mhm.
for example, if I wanted to stay in a two-star hotel in San Diego, it's about like $120 a night, let's say right now. Like,
Mhm.
if I want to stay in Best Western or something like that in downtown San Diego. If you want to stay in a five-star hotel in Afghanistan, it's about $90 to $100 a night. So
Wow.
you can imagine the same goes for cheaper hotels, right? So if I was staying on two-star hotels primarily throughout my travels that were, anywhere from like 20 to $35 a night, right? Like I had no apartment. So, I
Mm-hmm.
think rent for a one bedroom in San
No,
Diego, people spend like, 2,500,
5,000 a month.
4 grand or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
that was significantly less than my budget per month traveling. So
Right.
per month in all my, visas, flights, hotels, whatever, I was spending less money than I would just if I wanted to rent a nice one bedroom here in San Diego.
Did you collect anything from every country?
No, actually, I mean, other than friendships and smiles, right?
That's good.
I have three gifts that I ever received from my
Oh,
travels. Only three. One is, have you heard of the country of Tuvalu?
I have not.
So it is a small, tiny, second smallest country in the world by population after Vatican in the Pacific. Second most remote country in the world, like maybe 3 hour flight from Fiji. And
Wow.
the country is built, it's so skinny and small that life surrounds itself around the airport runway.
Oh.
So everything is around the runway. Like the hotels line up on the runway. It's a small atoll, right? So it's so thin. The restaurants, the prison, uh, the farms, the this sort of thing, the where they grow vegetables and whatever. And they also had a mosque, small mosque of I guess 40 Muslims in the whole country. And I always love, I'm not a very religious person, let's myself, let's say, but I'm deeply spiritual. So I love going to see places of worship, especially, communities that I wouldn't expect in certain places.
Were you surprised by any particular culture? Like, was there any like, wow, this culture is so amazing or really out there? Was there any culture that you were like, wow?
Yeah, I mean, 195 countries is
Right.
very hard to pick just one, but I think the country of Bhutan really sticks out.
Oh.
It's the country in kind of like in the Himalayas, just above
Oh.
India and close to Nepal as well. And it's this insanely well preserved beautiful, like Buddhist country in the mountains
Mhm.
that people have almost been like untouched by modern day, modernization and technology. Um, to go, government doesn't want to be overrun by tourism because, people ruin beautiful things, right? So they
Mhm.
charge a they charge $100 daily tourism fee. So
Wow.
that is their way of like limiting the amount of tourists that come in, very limited flight routes. Once you're there, it's very inexpensive, but they do this to protect like their culture. They don't
Mhm.
want
Everybody
people.
out there with their Instagram.
Yeah, like just to give you a sense of some of the things, like this is a country that there's no stoplights.
Mm.
They have manual guys that like direct. There's no stoplight in the whole country. Like I'm not
Wow.
exaggerating. They said they tried it once, like a few years ago, and everyone like, hated it and was like, this is crazy that we're doing this, and then they took it away. So, um, you know, it's crazy. Like driving by, I saw like archery, like friends would meet on Sundays and they'd go shoot archery together, like against, in teams. And they have these like,
Mm.
sports that we don't see. I mean, when have we ever driven by in the US and seen people, doing archery in a field, right?
Yes.
The way they cook, their cuisines, their
Mm.
dedication to spirituality and religion. And yeah, I just think that was for me being someone, maybe especially that there's always a lot going on in my head. I feel like my brain runs at a million miles an hour. We live in a country now that is maybe the most modern in world or one of the most modern, in big cities. We're always, stimulated. We're always on our phones. So to be in a place that is so disconnected from that was refreshing and perspective shifting.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I could feel just even you're talking about it, the slowdown. That would be
Yeah.
a really beautiful thing to
Yeah.
experience. That's nice. And say that name of that country again. Bhutan?
Bhutan.
Bhutan,
Bhutan.
Bhutan. Okay.
Yeah.
And when you were talking about the Taj Mahal, I have a similar goal that I did, and I reached all 50 states. But I remember seeing the Mount Rushmore, and everybody like talked about how cheesy it is and how silly this road trip is and all that. But I remember pulling up to Mount Rushmore and being completely overwhelmed with awe. I thought it was really an incredible sight. And so that's kind of a similar and not similar thing.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Just such an incredible journey you have. Now, across 195 countries. Now, there must have been a moment, maybe a million moments, when you seriously questioned this entire mission. What was that lowest moment and what kept you from walking away?
Phew, that's a
Yeah.
great question. I think the one that I'll always remember as in the moment extraordinarily stressful, but looking back, like, that I was able to handle a situation like that versus where I started was, something I'm very proud of myself with. So I was planning a Central Asia trip, and this means ticking off some of the harder countries, including Afghanistan.
Mm.
Taliban had just taken over a couple years earlier, so I don't know if remember scenes from 5 years ago, people hanging off planes trying to escape. It
Yes, I
was,
do. Yes. Yes, I
yeah,
remember
this,
that.
very dramatic, pivotal time for the country in a pretty negative way. And so I was supposed to get my visa in Pakistan. That fell through. And then I found a guy from a kind of travel chat forum who had unofficial ties, I guess, to Taliban and the embassy, that if I met him in Dubai in the Dubai Mall, he was able to supposedly get my visa. So he said
Mm.
to show up with like $300 in cash and my passport. So I show up to the Dubai Mall. It's morning, like elevators are just kind of humming. It's empty, and this is a crazy mall. This is like most. So it was weird. Like felt like a scene from Jason Bourne. Like this empty
Right.
mall. I go up to the Nike store and I'm like looking around, like where's this guy gonna appear? This guy shows up, Indian guy, and yeah, he's just like, "Where's the cash?" Pulled out 3 crisp $100 US bills, my passport, took my picture with his phone against a white wall, and he was like, "Come back in some hours." He was like, "I'll be back in some hours." So he came back, surely enough, right on time. Had this Afghanistan visa glued to my passport. Then I had a flight from Pakistan to Afghanistan. That was canceled.
Oh,
Then the night before, I rebooked. Sorry, I rebooked. Then the night before, 11 p.m. For my flight, that was canceled, and there were no flights for a week because of Eid holiday time. And so, uh, made the decision that the entry to my visa validity had only a certain window, and I needed to keep pace to get to the other countries. That I was gonna go by land through the mountains from Pakistan to Afghanistan, and that for me was like,
whoa.
I didn't tell my mom because she would have had
I
a
was
heart
gonna say.
I didn't tell my mom she would have a heart attack. I was very worried. I'd grown my beard out for a couple months in preparation for
Mhm.
that trip. Put on local clothing and found a driver that was willing to take me in the middle of the night because he said in the middle of the night, checkpoints will be quieter, and it'll be a little bit easier for us to get through. So we left maybe at 3 a.m. and went through the mountains. And I arrive at this border, and it's the most notorious, this border. There flows some days tens of thousands of Afghans and Pakistanis illegally trying to cross in and out. And it was like again a scene from a movie. You have people hanging onto the fence, and there's guards that are whipping people,
Oh
uh,
my
children crying, people screaming, and kind of finagled my way through. Uh, presented my U.S. passport. That I thought that would give me some not special treatment, but I would stick out in that.
leverage or something.
And when I got pulled in, I was detained by Pakistan Secret Service
Oh
because they were suspicious why an American was like kind of in a disguise. I'm ethnically
my,
Middle
right.
Eastern too, so I look Middle Eastern with an American passport, dressed like them, in the mountains at this border. Shortly after Taliban has taken over, like what if I think there were Americans that were being unlawfully like detained by Taliban at that point. So it was
Oh,
very confusing for them. And I just remember sitting in like 110-degree heat.
oh,
Sweat was pouring off my face. The guy to the right of me was just being whipped by the guards. There was Taliban soldier, to my left, not far off in the distance, with a thick beard and like a machine gun strapped across his chest. And sitting there, that was one of the moments that I was like, I cannot
what the?
believe I got myself into this situation.
Yeah.
Um, and so that I don't want to call it lowest point, but we talk about like the anxiety, right? That like closes up your chest and you feel the whole weight of everything,
Mhm.
in your shoulder, in your stomach, all parts of your body. Um, that was that for me. And second part of your question, how did I decide to keep going and what motivated that? Some of the best advice I've ever received is that when you have a dream in life, you have to go for it with everything that you have. And it sounds simple, maybe it sounds a little bit trite, but if you really like listen and internalize those words, right? Like if you set yourself this dream, this goal, which I have and I did, and that was something that was important to me, I was willing to give everything to that. I was willing to, if that meant, I mean, there were crazy times. I was in Somalia during Al-Shabaab attack. I was,
Mhm.
deathly ill in village in Algeria. Um, I was, I think detained in like 6 different countries across 4 or 5 different continents. Like, so this wasn't just one, there wasn't just one, time but, you really just have to learn to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And I think some of the most extraordinary, not comparing myself to, extreme athletes, but Alex Honnold, like
No.
he's this climber. He did that Netflix, he climbed that Taipei
Oh,
101, free
yes, I
climber.
do know about that. I didn't know his
Yeah,
name.
outside of the
Yes, yes,
building,
yes.
like you'll hear these guys speak and their brains are almost, different that they've just been able to force themselves into so much like resilience and adversity, and they keep going and they keep
Going.
going and they keep going. So things that seem impossible to normal people, for
Hmm.
them, that's just like their brains are wired like that. They've found ways to actually change the way that they think. Like neuroplasticity, right? Like you can
Right.
change your thoughts and how your body processes things and your mind processes things. So again, not to compare myself at all to those, ultra extraordinary human beings, but um, you really learn how to once you push past one of these, obstacles, you have the courage it takes to face the next one.
It's just that you think about, especially we Americans, we're kind of soft compared to a lot of places in the world. And when you all of a sudden get in those situations, you're like, this is real. This is not back home. This is
Yeah.
San Diego. This is real.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, as people say, shit just got real.
yeah.
So that's pretty incredible that you kept persevering, and look where it's brought you now. And I wanted to ask you this too. When you went into this, did you go into this thinking, I'm going to do this amazing thing, be the first and youngest person to do this, and then use that to build a career on? Like, did any of that ever occur to you at
I
that time?
love, I love that you just asked that question because I have a great anecdote and story to tell about it. So,
Oh, good.
the answer is no. My Instagram account was private for like my first 100 and something countries. I
Oh,
didn't even have an
really?
Instagram. I didn't even have an Instagram until after I had this idea to go every country. So, I
Mm.
my fresh up until like my sophomore or junior year of college, I didn't even have Instagram. So, no, like speaking or influencer, I never wanted to do anything like that. I just really loved traveling and I wanted to work on myself and I wanted to see the world. Um, Fast forward to a year and change ago, I had just finished this trip to every country, and in North Korea, was verified by Nomad Mania, this extreme travel community's youngest person to do that with stricter verification requirements than Guinness. So,
Hmm.
my journey didn't allow for like airport transits or, I had to do it kind of the real way with no loopholes. So I got, recognized by this. I was featured by all these wonderful, major national, international news organizations. Graduated at the top of my class in college. And I say this because I think that, ego is like the bane of humanity, right? And not that I think I let my ego, get too much, but I had in my idea, I wanted to be a sports agent for tennis. Sorry, I
Oh,
forgot to mention that. So I
oh,
wanted to be a
cool.
sports agent for tennis throughout this journey. That was my plan. I finished this mission with, all of these kind of great accolades, being able to, complete this extraordinary journey. And I thought to myself, like, which agency is going to want to hire me? Like who's gonna hire me? Who's gonna pick me up? Like where is it at? Who wants me
Mm.
first? And I tried for 7 months to get a job in tennis. I did everything that I possibly could to get a job as a sports agent. I went to every single tournament. I, used every networking opportunity I had, was just relentless with, following up with people. Granted, this is a very niche industry. You have, maybe 20 tennis agents in the whole entire world.
Right.
People don't leave the career, so it's very hard to get in. And to, a lot of it is timing, maybe luck, but I got my ass kicked, and that was very humbling to go from, reaching this extraordinary pinnacle of this, journey, 195 countries, doing something, I never thought I'd imagine I could, to then getting my ass kicked and seeing other people that I knew be able to get in and to get jobs and to do all this sort of thing that I couldn't do. And so was very lost and kind of serendipitously found speaking. My brother played
Mm.
pickleball with business executive who, like I said, hired some speakers, and he's like, "Your brother should look into speaking." I didn't even know speaking was like a
A
thing. I was like,
thing. I know.
what does that even mean? Like you give like TED Talks, and I could actually given a TED Talk my sophomore year of college, like just for a fun thing. It was not a great
Mhm.
talk, but I didn't
Oh,
know that
I
was a
just watched
profession.
it. And you didn't have your beard and everything. I'm like, oh, look
Yeah,
at little
yeah.
Cameron.
I
It was
didn't know that
very
was
good.
a profession that people do that,
Right.
for a living. And so looked into it and it was great because again, like if not to compare myself, again, I don't want people to think I'm again comparing myself, but I think the
Yeah.
analogies are good. That when you hear athletes accomplish, something that they've worked their entire life for, right? Winning whatever title it is, gold medal, they'll say that, it felt like they had this, euphoria moment, and then it was like, now what? And they felt a
Yes.
little lost and a little bit empty. And that is how
Which
I
is a
felt.
question I'm going to come to, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
but
That,
continue.
that's how I felt, that I worked towards this whole thing for, 6, 7 years, given like, everything I had in my bones to be able to accomplish it, sacrificed a lot of things to be able to do that, in this case, even career-wise,
Relationships, who
friends,
knows?
relationships, dating, like everything I put aside to do this one thing. And so speaking now is really great because I get to channel that same like enthusiasm and passion that I have for travel, and I get to do it into storytelling, into
Mhm.
hopefully helping people. I love speaking, and that like lights my soul on fire. That I can
Yes.
channel that energy into something else now.
Yes, I love that so much. Similar for me, people ask me all the time if I started the Wise Pineapple Facebook group and wrote the book all to come to this and work on my own and have my own business.
Right.
And I tell everybody, I wish I could tell you I was that visionary. I did not even know about this world. It all happened so organically. I just literally wanted to give service providers this gift of how to stand tall, be empowered, and change the world. And
Yeah,
I just wanted to say I did it. I put it in the world. And then what happened afterwards was like complete shock.
yeah,
So it's funny because today there are many people and no disrespect to them are very intentional about doing certain things for where it will lead.
yeah.
Bless you, you're a visionary. But it is interesting to see people who just start a journey and then what it comes to be this life-changing thing. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes, right, it's like, there was the professional aspect of you said some people start thing and then say, where do I want to be 5 years from now professionally? And I think that's
right.
great. But in my case, I also did set a goal, but it was a personal one. Like,
Mm.
I said, what is the person that I want to be in 5 years from now? Not
Yes.
professionally, but as a person. Like I wanted to better manage my mental health, really. Like that was the number one thing. I wanted to learn about myself, not to sound trite, but like solo travel. And again, I don't want it to be like eat, pray, love, but it does teach you how to find yourself, right? Like it teaches you,
Mhm.
you get to know yourself really well, like your interests, what you like, what you don't like, the people you enjoy surrounding yourself with, how to make human connections with others, right? And so, um, I don't think that you can necessarily like teach empathy, but I think that you can learn how to connect with people better on, a deeper
I
level.
think there's no way you don't go to the countries you've been to and see what you've seen and not come back more empathetic. We are living in a comfort crisis. We are always in the temperature we want to be in. We have the things we need. For the most part, majority of people in America have that, right? And when you go and you see the way it is. And that's what I love about books. I love books because it brings me to other worlds and other
Yeah,
people and other cultures, and it helps me to be a more empathetic person. You
yeah.
have been the youngest person to ever reach all 195 countries. When you finished, how did you feel? Did you feel lost? How did you channel being done with such a big thing?
Yeah, I hinted at it, a little earlier, but it's funny. People ask me if I felt that way when I arrived in North Korea, but because of, how I guess dramatic that ending was, like in such an obscure country, surrounded by lots of my friends who had actually, been with me on the journey, they were joining me there. And I was also very anxious about getting back into the US after going to North Korea. So I didn't start to feel like this mission was over while I was there. It was
Okay.
actually I flew back. So I flew back from Pyongyang to China, China to South Korea, South Korea to the US, freaking out if, they're gonna stop me or, any sort of issue. There wasn't, thankfully. Passed by, and I am at the escalator. Have you ever flown into Los Angeles Airport?
Yeah.
Internationally?
Hmm.
Okay,
Well,
so
oh, internationally. Yes, I have. Yes.
arrived. Okay, so the way it works is you pass, and then there's an escalator that goes down from the top of immigration to baggage claim. And I get to the escalator right after I pass immigration, and I was like, okay. And I just dropped my duffel bag, and I just started crying. Like I
Oh,
just started
really?
just crying, like looking down at the escalator that, I couldn't believe. And I wasn't like sad. I wasn't happy. It was just like all of these like emotions, I guess, that it had taken to get there, just kind of like released. And I'm sure people were, looking at me like, what's going
Well,
on, right?
yeah.
But it was, I was just there, like, escalator is moving down and, duffel bag by my side, the same bag that had been with me to, every country in the world, and just yeah, was just uncontrollably crying. And
Oh, I love
there
that
was
though.
a period after that, I was trying to figure out tennis didn't work out for me. I wanted to be, tennis agent and just felt very like lost and confused. And it was a tough period, that I wanted to be able to feel that same level of like, I'm working towards something, right? I'm working towards
Hmm.
something, whether that be, professional goal, and I have those as well, personal development goal that, I could accomplish something I never imagined I could. And I really was missing that. So thankfully I found speaking. I'm so grateful for that.
Hmm.
And yeah, I'm gonna keep, trying to be better. Same way in travel, right? Like every day I was trying to be better than the day I was before. Like,
Hmm.
as a person, my mental health, knowledge about, the world. And so speaking is so great. Speaking is so great because it teaches you these awesome life skills, that it's a lot of like soft skills, right? And so the thing that was amazing too at, the conference, not to go on a tangent, but you'll notice that so many of the best speakers there have been doing this, 30, 40 years,
Hmm.
5 million, some even I think $10 million in annual revenue, that they were so copious in taking notes and asking questions.
Yes.
They just want to be better than they were today, better tomorrow than they were today, right?
Yes.
And
At
that's
the
the same.
workshops, you would think at that level, they're not going to the workshops, right?
Yeah.
And they were at the right workshops, taking notes, asking questions. I
Yeah.
loved it.
And that doesn't come like that comes from a commitment like internally to be better, right? That there's something that's driving that this is their love, this is their passion. And they if they didn't, care about this and they were not passionate, I can guarantee you that those people, they don't need some of them don't even never need to work a day in their life ever again. But they're
Right.
still there showing up and they're learning and they're trying to be better and trying to just have a relentless commitment to improvement. And that's
Hmm.
how I feel now. That's what I felt when I was traveling. And I think that's, one of the keys to living a meaningful and purposeful life.
Yes, that's fascinating. It's funny because now I've met quite a few people that have done something for the first time or accomplished like this goal. And I have to say that I was so excited at my last state and it was so exciting. And then it was the next day. I felt this emptiness because there was nothing left to achieve on it. And I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, what do I have to do next?
yeah,
I
yeah.
have got to accomplish something next. And so now I'm trying to work on countries. And but actually, my first one is continents. So I've got two more continents to get to. But actually, let me ask you about that really quickly. One of my continents is Antarctica.
Okay.
Tell me anything about that trip for you. Was that very
But you
difficult?
you want to go, yeah, Antarctica is it's like this, Earth's last great wilderness,
Right.
right? And I think that being there teaches you that we're not as important as we think we are. And what I mean by that is like, this is this beautiful continent, like seeing vast landscapes like that, so dramatic and that solitude. This was a place that was here millions of years, before this modern day society, before you and I were here. It's going to be around for millions of years after we're long gone. And I don't know, like it's really hard to articulate, but something just like yeah, just being surrounded by these like glaciers, the sky, the size of skyscrapers, and
Mm,
seeing wildlife and the penguins and the seals and the natural habitat, like not in like a Sea World or whatever, like just seeing
right.
that great wilderness, that frozen landscape.
I've heard so many people say that they booked this trip to check it off the box and found that it was one of their all-time favorite trips.
Yeah, I didn't, yeah, the single most beautiful place I've ever been, whatever,
Okay,
but
so
I just don't
tell
like.
us a little bit more about North Korea because most of us would think, wow, that would be the one that we'd all skip. How were the people? What was it like? What did it look
Yeah,
like?
I think you have this very strange, borderline shocking juxtaposition of this dystopian world that you imagine, which it is, like you imagine this like sci-fi dystopian,
Right.
um, Kim Jong-un, this, there are towers of him, right? People go and like give him flowers and they wear pictures of his ancestors as pins on their shirts, and in every apartment, pictures of his father, his grandfather are hanging. So you have that very weird creepy classical music they play on loudspeakers on the streets at night, which is crazy.
Mhm.
Like they have these loudspeakers that play these like Korean classical anthems at night on empty streets.
Mm.
So you have that's, you know, on one side, and then on the other, you have people going on normal life. So you have people like going to coffee shops, going on dates, kids playing frisbee with their parents in the park, people that are riding their bikes to work, people going to bars and drinking. Like so
Mm.
it is almost like it's hard to explain like those such different realms of life kind of coexisting. Um, and it's yeah, it's shocking, it's unusual. It was definitely the craziest experience I ever had
Yeah.
to be there. I say perfect ending to the story, right? To finish in
Right.
that type of country.
Did you
And
purposely choose North Korea as your
no,
last?
no. North
Oh.
Korea was closed for 5 years. So it was fully closed
Oh.
since COVID. So when I started, or 6 years or whatever, when I started, I was going to do this journey. It had been closed. So there was
Mm.
no way. I thought I would be able to get to 194 countries. I didn't think I'd be able to get to 195.
Yeah.
I had 3 months left to set this record for youngest person. And I was like, I'm
Oh.
going. Like, there's no way that in 3 months that, what are the odds of that? And miracles happen, right? And they opened for this Pyongyang marathon very last minute, like 2 weeks
Mm.
notice that they were going to do it. And that's why, like, that was the only reason I would have loved to have gone earlier. It was always weighing on me that, I'm never going to be able to make it. But
Right.
uh, yeah,
Oh, that's really cool. Now, I want to make sure we talk about this because this is really amazing. Again, how every time you say yes, you can change the world. Now, your visit to Nigeria eventually led you to create Humanity Effect. Tell us
yeah.
about that.
Life takes us on these very serendipitous, turns and side streets, doesn't it? So I was in Nigeria. This is my 115th country.
Oh.
So I'd seen a lot at that point. Quite a bit, really, like some of the worst poverty that exists in the world.
Mm.
And I'd heard about this floating fishing community called Makoko, which is 200,000 people that live on wooden stilts above a lagoon filled with sewage. So their homes are actually built above the water. And instead of cars, they have canoes, right? So, like, if you go see your friend, you hop in your little wooden boat and you paddle. But this is not Venice. Like, the water is black, cooking fires, it's hazy, not particularly safe. I think the life expectancy in Makoko is like 50 years old. This is not a good place. And so I was very drawn to places like that, actually, kind of deepen my understanding of the world. So reached out to a local guide, wound up in the slum, was paddling in this, wooden canoe and these, water alleyways, let's say, and heard an elementary school. There were sounds, like drumming sounds that were coming from the water. And it turns out that it was the morning assembly for a primary school that they sing every morning. So I went over to check it out. Teacher invited me into the school, and I saw, you know, shocking yet inspiring at the same time, depressing and sad that, the lights were flickering from a generator that barely worked. Most of the kids had no shoes. The roof was collapsing. There was like 60 kids squeezed into like a small classroom. Their notebooks were torn in half. But with such a enthusiasm for, education, and, I asked one of the students, I didn't, frame it in a way that would make him sad, but I said, what is it? Why do you like going to school so much? And he said, you have to remember that we're the lucky ones, that only 15% of the kids in Makoko get the chance to go to school. And
Oh.
so we are the lucky ones to be here. And that really, like, stuck with me, that this kid had the awareness and consciousness and emotional intelligence to recognize that, in his own life, that, level of gratitude that I had never managed to have in my own.
Mm.
And so I leave, was, very inspired by the kids, decided to do a little GoFundMe fundraiser to raise some money for them. Was just going to raise like $1,000. And, college kids are not particularly wealthy. So a lot of the donations were like 5, 10, $20 from my
It's all
college friends.
right.
And wound up raising like, $1,500. So I was very happy, sent out the thank you message on the GoFundMe that we did this. And I didn't close the donations. I didn't think to do that. And then next morning, I got an email from GoFundMe that said, you have donation of $45,000 from Kyrie. And I said, who's Kyrie? Where's Kyrie? So I click it. I thought it was a fake email. I was like, this can't be real. It's phishing, whatever. Like, never know these days, right?
Yeah.
And got a email from Dallas Mavericks that I guess Kyrie Irving had seen a fundraiser, and very famous NBA basketball player, seen fundraiser online, and random act of kindness. And I actually never spoke to him, I never communicated with him. Still to this day, I've never
Oh
done
my
that. But with that amount of funds, I was like, okay, I have this great opportunity to make a lasting impact. I always wanted to do humanitarian work. That was something social impact, very important to me. And so started Humanity Effect, that this belief that, collective humanity that we have in the world can affect some sort of change. And that was wow, yeah, over 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago now.
And so it's still going.
Yeah, so
People listening to this right now could even
well,
donate.
there's a twist and a turn,
Okay.
but that maybe adds to the point, right? So we doing great work. So we, set up these fix the initial school, start paying the teachers' salaries, get all the kids new notebooks and books and backpacks and shoes and lights. And then we built an orphanage for 30 kids with beds. And then we built a medical center and started doing medical missions, having doctors come. And then we built a second school. So we started educating over 750 children between the two schools, hired local staff. I started bringing groups to Nigeria to see our work, growing at this amazing rate. And then this past January, the community was demolished by the government because it is unfortunately in a very prime part of Lagos, in the center of the city almost, and it's prime real estate. And so, city, they call it a legal settlement. That Makoko is an illegal settlement, and that they, I guess, had some deal with a local developer to build luxury hotels and condos. And one day they showed up and literally just with bulldozers and started bulldozing the houses. People's, basic wooden, homes were just collapsed into water, and then they started lighting them on fires, spraying
Oh,
tear gas to anyone who wouldn't leave. And orphanage was torn down. Our schools were very badly damaged, almost to the point that they can barely operate. And that was heartbreaking, not for me. For me, I'm, in the comfort of San Diego, but, our
mhm,
kids that, had something, no access to education, had that, and then had it like really ripped away from them,
mhm,
without any reason or explanation. And devastating for them, but I think, a story of resilience, right? Like many of them and their families relocated to other parts of Nigeria where they continued their schooling. One of our schools is still like half functioning. So we have, classes, even though the top part is destroyed. And again, like at this stage, we're not investing in Makoko because government will, I'm sure, come back and, you
right.
know, finish the job. But we kind of transitioned. So now we have a new orphanage that we're partnering with a existing nonprofit in Nigeria. They've had over 30 years of experience caring for orphans. So we're kind of doing a partnership with them, supporting the kids. And for us now, for me, the most important thing is to be able to see like the progression of the pathway, right? So supporting them not just in their primary years, but then in middle school, high school. Hopefully, we're going to pay their university fees, and I really want to see them like
Mm,
develop as people. So that's where we're at now. It's sad for me that that had happened. Such a special place, in my heart and in our
yeah.
students' hearts. But we roll with the punches, right? And we do our best given the circumstances, and keep just trying to break open doors and to again, just not
Do
let
good.
anything
Make a
stop us, right?
difference.
So that's where we're at now.
Yeah. And so right now your charity is still open
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
to help.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Humanity
good to
Effect. Yeah,
know. I'll
check out our
definitely be
website. Yeah,
I'll be putting it in the show notes. So
great.
you now speak after all of this. So you kind of alluded to this. You now speak about overcoming fear, navigating uncertainty, and challenging self-imposed limits. So for any person who is listening who feels trapped by anxiety or circumstances, what are some of those tips or one practical step that they could take today?
I think, we've spoken at length about it, which is exposure therapy. I
Yeah.
think this is a therapy that maybe was designed for people with OCD, but the concept is the same for anyone at any point of their life. I have friends that are scared to go talk to girls in nightclubs. I have friends that are terrified of public speaking. Some they could never do a solo trip abroad. They're too like, nervous or scared or awkward to even go to like a coffee shop and sit by themselves, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there are such a range of things that, we I don't think there's anyone in the entire world that is not, scared of something, right? Even if it's an
Hmm.
irrational thing or something that, we know is not going to hurt us in long term. Um, and we need to intentionally force ourselves into those situations. But the key here is that you don't want to throw yourself into the deep end because, there was a kind of junky therapy method for people with OCD that was designed before called flooding, which is that you expose the OCD person to an overwhelming amount of the things that freak them out, and
Hmm.
hopefully that the nervous system will be so shocked that they'll just get over it. And that's actually extremely harmful. And
It's like the person who's afraid of the water, you throw them in.
yeah, yeah, or you don't want to put something you want to be where you're at. And we spoke about that, earlier, be where you're at in your life and then kind of gradually push yourself. So, I made a list of 1 to 10. One is something, two things that didn't really bother me, but were still a bit annoying, caused slight anxiety, threes, four, fives, all the way up to 10, things that, terrified me. And you start with the ones and the twos. And,
Hmm.
you really put yourself in, those situations and then you work your way up. And the improvement will be shockingly fast. Like,
Hmm.
it can dramatically change your life in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So,
So many people say to me, "Oh my God, you went on that trip alone?" And I travel alone all the time. But so it might be going to the movie all by
yeah,
yourself or going out to a dinner all by yourself and then like making little baby steps up to that
yeah,
solo travel. And I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have ever thought to go on a solo trip by myself if I hadn't started traveling for work, which I
yeah,
naturally would go to work by myself. And even though there would be in other places. So if I wanted to go out for dinner, I had to go alone for the most
sure,
part. So that got me kind of used to it. And then I started going on real pleasure trips by
sure,
myself.
sure.
So every show, we ask our previous guest to leave a question for our next guest. Your question is so appropriate. Lonnie was our last guest, and his question was, what is the weirdest thing you have found in a hotel room?
Yeah. I stayed in a hotel room in Tuvalu. I think I mentioned that. That was literally like infested with every insect you could imagine. Like giant grasshoppers and
Oh,
spiders and worms and
oh
mosquitoes.
my God.
And it was like the only option. Like you can't book a hotel there on booking.com. Like I had to
Right.
find the Facebook number. Like everywhere was sold out weirdly, like all the homestays from Australian construction workers who were there to like
Oh.
put some infrastructure. So there was no other option. And yeah, that was a interesting surprise walking into that room.
Wow. Okay. That really was exposure
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Cameron, tell everybody where they can connect with you, learn more about your charity, learn more about your speaking. Tell
Sure.
everybody.
Yeah, so CameronMofid.com. That's my website. People can go check out a little bit about my background, about some of the keynotes that I offer and lessons that I share. Also on Instagram, I'm very active, sharing
Oh, good.
both journey of a speaker, mental health, of course, travel. So that's really the forefront of that for me. LinkedIn as well, posting great stories that I've had from my trips over the years. I wanted to spice up LinkedIn a little bit because sometimes it gets a little boring. So
A little boring. Yeah.
I wanted to add some spice, some crazy stories in there.
Good.
And yeah, those are really the best ways to stay connected, to find me. And as I said, I just would like to encourage people to, run towards their greatest fears and further away from them. And I think that the life that they want is on the other side of that.
Yes. Say yes. I love it. I have to ask this last question. Is there any place you want to go? Like, did it kind of ruin your like travel?
Oh no, the more that you travel, the more you learn how big the world is and how little you've seen. So there are so many too many like, talking, maybe 50 or 100 countries that I have on my list that I want to go see certain places or regions.
Okay, again, yes, in
So,
a different place.
yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yes. Very good. Well, Cameron, I can't thank you enough for taking so much time. I knew I was gonna like overwhelm with so many
No, all
questions,
good.
but
It
I
was an honor.
just enjoy every minute and every conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye. That's a wrap for today's show. Say yes to taking action and changing the world one yes at a time. And oh, my friend, will you say yes to review, like, and subscribe? The more yeses you give, the more juicy goodness I can bring to all of you wise pineapples. Cool or cool?